Right now, millions of people are paying an absolute premium for clean label botanical skincare. You see it everywhere.
Oh, totally everywhere. It is a massive market.
Right. And, dietary supplements too. But according to the supply chain data in front of us, there is a very good chance that the expensive, bright orange botanical serum sitting on your bathroom counter right now has just zero therapeutic value left.
Zero. Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
In fact, it might be actively working against your skin. I mean, you could just be rubbing expensive orange-tinted oxidized lipids all over your face.
It is, it's the ultimate diagnostic blind spot for the consumer. And the front of a label tells you almost nothing about the chemical reality functioning inside that actual bottle.
Well, welcome in, everyone. I'm so glad you're joining us for this deep dive. Today, we are looking at a huge stack of research and supply chain documentation all about the botanical extract industry.
Yes, and specifically, we are putting sea buckthorn extract right under the microscope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which serves as like the perfect diagnostic case study for this.
It really does.
Because our mission today isn't just to talk about what this one specific berry does.
Yeah.
Today is really a masterclass in how to verify the quality of any botanical extract.
Any extract at all, yeah. The rules apply across the board.
So whether you are formulating a product line for your brand, or prepping for a supply chain meeting, or maybe you just want to be a much smarter buyer when you're auditing your own supplement cabinet, we are going deep today.
You're going to learn exactly how to dissect a certificate of analysis.
Which is huge.
Right. And how to verify the actual chemistry of third-party certifications and really understand why the microscopic forces used to, squeeze a plant completely change what it does to your cellular biology.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why are we seeing sea buckthorn specifically dominating the market right now?
Well, sea buckthorn is riding this massive wave of demand for highly functional antioxidant-rich ingredients.
Like it's crossing over into everything, right?
Oh, entirely. It's crossing into functional foods, nutraceuticals, high-end cosmetics. And that's because the preliminary research is just incredibly compelling.
Yeah.
I mean, we are seeing strong signals for modulating inflammation, supporting skin lipid barriers, and even potential cardiometabolic and gut microbiota support.
Wow, so it's a heavy hitter.
Exactly. But here is the catch. Because it is a botanical extract and not, a strictly regulated therapeutic drug, the biological benefits entirely depend on the chemical fingerprint of the specific batch.
So if the regulatory agencies aren't standardizing this for us, the burden of proof just shifts entirely to the buyer, like to you.
That's exactly right. You are on your own to verify it.
We have to rely on the COA.
Right.
The Certificate of Analysis.
Yeah.
Looking at these source documents, a lot of these COAs just look like a completely foreign language. I mean, they are dense.
They are very dense, but they're dense by necessity.
Yeah.
You are prioritizing the presence and the exact balance of specific standardization markers. You aren't just measuring total berry content. That doesn't mean anything. For sea buckthorn, the two critical markers determining efficacy are your carotenoid levels and your total polyphenol content.
Let me push back on how we look at this document, though. Because in the past, people have treated a COA like a basic background check, just a simple pass-fail grade.
Yeah, which is a huge mistake.
Right, because based on the chemistry we're looking at here, it functions a lot more like a software patch release note.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
It's a chemical blueprint, right. It guarantees the code is going to run the exact same way on your body's operating system as it did in whatever clinical trials they're referencing.
That is a much more accurate framework, because if a supplier hands you a piece of paper that just says, 100% sea buckthorn, you should honestly hand it right back to them.
Just walk away.
Seriously. A rigorous COA requires explicit quantitative ranges for those marker values. It must document the exact percentage of carotenoids and polyphenols.
And it goes beyond just the good stuff too, right?
Exactly. It also has to detail strict, quantifiable limits for the bad stuff, heavy metals, microbial counts, and residual solvents left over from the manufacturing process.
And it has to state exactly how they tested for those markers, right? Because the source notes specifically mention that bad actors can easily trick basic testing.
Oh, absolutely. This is where the industry gets highly sophisticated.
Yeah.
And a bit shady, honestly.
Really?
Yeah. Basic UVV's spectrophotometry, which is an older testing method, it just measures how much light the compound absorbs.
Just the color, basically.
Right. And adulterators know this, so they will spike a really weak extract with cheap synthetic dyes or, isolated, low-grade compounds that just mimic the UV absorbance of natural carotenoids.
Wow, so the machine reads the orange color and just passes the batch.
Exactly. The COA looks great on paper, but the biology is totally fake.
That is wild. So how do you actually combat that?
To combat that, a transparent COA will specify that they used HPLC, which is high-performance liquid chromatography.
HPLC.
Right, because HPLC actually separates the individual molecules so you can see the precise chemical structures. It verifies that the carotenoids are genuinely derived from the C. buckthorn matrix, not just some synthetic additive they threw in.
Okay, so it's actually looking at the shape of the molecule.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is that this level of analytical transparency is the only mechanism that guarantees consistent performance across different product batches.
Right, because otherwise you're flying blind.
Exactly. If you formulate a moisturizer in January, right, and then mix new batch in July, that HPLC data on the COA is what ensures both batches provide identical oxidative protection to your customer's skin.
Because without that baseline marker data, I mean, the July batch might have been harvested from a stressed crop, yielded 0 actual carotenoids, and your brand's efficacy just plummets without you even realizing it.
And you lose consumer trust almost immediately. They notice when a product stops working.
So true. So if the COA is the chemical blueprint, that naturally raises the next problem for me. You know what active markers you want, but how do those markers actually get pulled out of the raw biomass in the first place?
The extraction method.
Right, because the sources emphasize that the extraction method fundamentally rewrites that COA.
It does. The extraction technology dictates the entire chemical spectrum of the final ingredient. It really all comes down to chemical affinity and polarity.
It's kind of like making coffee, right? But on a molecular level.
Yes, exactly like that.
Because a slow, room temperature cold brew uses time to extract very specific low-acid flavor compounds. But a high-pressure, steam-driven espresso machine violently forces completely different oils and dense aromatics out of the exact same bean.
That's a perfect analogy.
The input is identical, but the physical forces change the chemistry of the final cup.
The physical forces determine what survives the process. In the commercial botanical market, you are primarily evaluating 2 extraction methods: supercritical CO2 extraction and ethanolic or hydroethanolic extraction.
Okay, let's break those down, starting with the supercritical CO2. Because looking at the notes, it seems to be the absolute gold standard for premium cosmetics. How does that actually work?
Well, it relies on carbon dioxide pushed into a supercritical state, meaning it is subjected to such extreme temperature and pressure that it exhibits properties of both a gas and a liquid at the exact same time.
That sounds intense.
It is. But in this state, CO2 acts as a highly effective non-polar solvent.
Non-polar meaning it specifically targets fats and lipids, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And carotenoids, which are those vibrant orange antioxidants in C. buckthorn, they are fat soluble. So the supercritical CO2 acts like a non-polar magnet.
Okay, I see.
It slips deeply into the plant matrix and cleanly pulls out all those lipophilic compounds, the carotenoids and the beneficial fatty acids, and it leaves all the water-soluble compounds behind.
And because it's just CO2, once you drop the pressure, the gas simply evaporates into the air, right?
Exactly, leaving 0 solvent residue behind. It creates a remarkably clean sensory profile and a really highly standardized extract powder or oil. And because it preserves those fat-soluble markers so flawlessly, CO2 extracts are just the ideal choice for premium topical serums and moisturizers.
Because you're relying on those carotenoids for UV protection properties and, like, skin barrier repair.
Exactly. It's also the superior choice for dietary capsules, where maintaining the physical integrity of a powder is really necessary for formulation.
Okay, but as you said, the CO2 method leaves the water-soluble stuff behind, which brings us to the second method, ethanolic extraction.
Right, so ethanolic extraction leverages ethanol, or a specific ratio of water and ethanol, as a polar solvent. This method is really designed to rupture the plant cell walls and maximize the extraction of the total polyphenol content.
And polyphenols are different from carotenoids.
Completely different. Polyphenols are highly water-soluble, incredibly potent antioxidants with a completely different biological mechanism than carotenoids.
Got it. So if I want to formulate a functional beverage or a wellness gummy, I can't really use a lipophilic CO2 oil, right? Because oil and water just don't mix.
No, they don't. You would end up with an oily slick on top of your drink.
Exactly. So I need the ethanolic liquid extract for that.
That is the primary commercial application. Ethanolic extraction produces a food-grade liquid extract or a tincture that is structurally compatible with aqueous environments.
Yeah.
Beverages, gummies, certain types of cosmetic emulsions.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because if your manufacturer is using industrial ethanol to strip those polyphenols out of the berry, you absolutely must verify the residual solvent limits on that COA we just talked about.
It becomes a mandatory compliance and safety check. You can't skip it.
Right.
Because with supercritical CO2, residual solvent isn't a factor, it evaporates. But if a brand is utilizing an ethanolic extract for a dietary supplement or a functional food application, they carry the liability of ensuring the trace amounts of ethanol left in the final product meet very strict local regulatory and toxicity limits.
Nobody wants to take a health tincture every morning that secretly contains trace industrial processing alcohol.
No, definitely not. Which underscores why you cannot simply swap one botanical extract for another on a formulation sheet.
It's not a one-to-one replacement.
Not at all. If you want vibrant color and carotenoid-based oxidative protection for a lipid serum, an ethanolic extract is just the wrong tool for the job. And if you need a high polyphenol profile for a functional beverage, CO2 powder will fail in solution. The chemistry must align with the application.
Okay, so let's play this out. We are formulating a new skincare line. We know the chemistry. We've specifically demanded a CO2 extraction to get those nonpolar carotenoids. We have our HPLC verified COA confirming the exact marker percentages. I mean, we're feeling incredibly smart right now.
You're doing everything right so far.
Right, but looking at the traceability data, all of that perfect science is just useless if the raw dirt the plant grew in was compromised.
Yeah. The entire analytical framework completely collapses if the raw biomass is fraudulent. Adulteration is rampant right now, and as we discussed, it is highly sophisticated.
Let me challenge the practicality of this, though, because the source checklist says a buyer needs to verify geographic origin, cultivar data, good agricultural practice adherence, and comprehensive chain of custody.
Yes, all of those are essential.
But if I'm a mid-sized indie brand trying to source ingredients, is a massive global supplier actually going to hand over their proprietary agricultural data just because I asked?
If they refuse, you find another supplier. Full stop.
Really? You just watch?
You have to. The premium botanical market operates on transparency now. You absolutely require the specific plant genetics, the cultivar data on file.
Because the genetics change the chemistry.
Drastically. Different subspecies of sea buckthorn grow in radically different climates. The European belts and the high-altitude Asian belts force the plant to develop completely different lipid and polyphenol profiles just to survive the environmental stress.
Okay, so a berry grown in a mild, sunny valley will have a totally different chemical defense mechanism than a berry surviving a freezing mountain altitude.
And that defense mechanism is the active marker you are paying for.
Wow.
So marketing language claiming, wild harvested means absolutely nothing without the cultivar data to substantiate the chemical baseline.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
What about the good agricultural practice, or GAP, adherence? Is that just, making sure they didn't douse the crop in pesticides?
Pesticide mitigation is a big part of it, definitely. But GAP also dictates harvest timing and immediate post-harvest handling.
Post-harvest handling. Why does that matter so much?
Because carotenoid peaks in the berry fluctuate violently depending on whether they are harvested in early autumn versus post-frost.
Okay.
And if your supplier's chain of custody documentation shows that the harvested berries just sat in a warm processing yard for 4 days before extraction, those sensitive active markers have already oxidized.
They're dead.
Exactly. The biomass is exhausted before the CO2 machine even turns on.
And obviously, you want third-party eyes validating all this logistics data. You can't just take their word for it.
Never. You must demand accredited third-party lab testing alongside GMP Good Manufacturing Practice certifications and ISO audits. And, depending on your target consumer, you also need the paper trail for official organic and non-GMO status.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, demanding this level of traceability isn't just about playing defense against adulteration. It's an incredibly powerful commercial differentiator.
Oh, it's the foundation of modern brand equity. Consumers are heavily scrutinizing clean label positioning.
They want to know exactly what they're buying.
Right. When you possess a documented, unassailable chain of custody, you aren't just selling a chemical marker, you are substantiating your sustainability claims. You can definitively prove fair labor standards, responsible agricultural water use, and biodiversity protection.
So what does this all mean for the final stretch? We've sourced a genetically verified cultivar from a sustainable farm. We extracted it flawlessly with supercritical CO2. We have an HPLC-tested COA. We formulate the product, we bottle it, and ship it.
Sounds like a success.
But wait, all that rigorous science is completely undermined if the product degrades while sitting in a warehouse or on a brightly lit retail shelf, right?
Yes, that is the vulnerability that ruins so many promising formulations. The handling and the final packaging are the functional armor for the chemistry.
The functional armor, I like that.
If that armor fails, the consumer receives zero biological benefit.
Let's talk about the specific mechanics of that degradation. Why does just sitting on a shelf destroy the product?
Well, carotenoid-rich botanical extracts are highly unstable when exposed to light, heat, and oxygen. When UV light or ambient oxygen penetrates a clear bottle, it triggers a chain reaction called lipid peroxidation.
Lipid peroxidation. Okay, what does that actually mean?
The light energy literally cleaves the chemical bonds of the carotenoids and the fatty acids. The molecules break apart, they oxidize, and they basically go rancid.
This is the critical aha moment for me right here. Because when we talk about a supplement or a serum degrading, we usually just assume it becomes less effective, like it just goes inert.
That's a common assumption, yeah.
But lipid peroxidation means it actively turns into a pro-oxidant. If you have a clear glass bottle of sea buckthorn facial oil sitting on your sunny bathroom windowsill, those lipids are actively oxidizing.
Yes.
So you are actively rubbing cell-damaging free radicals onto your skin. It causes the exact premature aging you bought the product to prevent in the first place.
That is the precise biological consequence of poor packaging, which is why formulators have to match the packaging to the extraction method.
So how do you match it properly?
If you are using a CO2-extracted standardized powder housed in a dietary capsule, your primary enemy is ambient humidity. You require aggressive moisture protection, often blister packs or desiccant-lined bottles, to maintain the structural integrity of the capsule.
Right, because if moisture gets in, it clumps.
Exactly. And ensuring the powder doesn't clump is vital because clumping destroys its bioavailability in the gut. Your body just can't absorb it.
And if you're using the other method, like the ethanolic liquid extract or a tincture,
then your primary enemy is UV light. Ethanolic extracts suffer from severe photostability issues. Light-induced degradation will rapidly destroy the active polyphenols and literally bleach the vibrant color right out of the liquid.
Oh, wow, it just turns clear.
Yeah, it looks terrible and it's chemically dead.
Yeah.
For those formats, you must formulate with amber glass, opaque Miron violet glass, or utilize protective inner liners to block the light spectrum.
So, if you are browsing the vitamin aisle, and you see a premium botanical tincture sitting in a beautiful, highly aesthetic, perfectly clear glass bottle directly under those intense fluorescent store lights.
Do not buy it.
Just skip it.
Seriously, skip it. The bioactive compounds are actively degrading while you are looking at them.
That reframes the entire consumer experience for me. The packaging isn't just marketing design, it's an active chemical shield.
It has to remain completely intact throughout the entire global distribution network. Bulk storage must be climate controlled, and crucially, formulators are obligated to put explicit storage instructions on the final consumer label.
You see store in a cool, dark place, printed on everything, right?
Yeah.
And I think most of us just ignore it and throw the bottle on the counter.
You cannot ignore it with highly standardized botanicals. If you want the biological potency and in cosmetics, if you want the emulsion to maintain its intended color and viscosity without separating those storage instructions, are a chemical mandate.
It is a phenomenal chain of custody to think about. I mean, if you drop the baton at any single point, the wrong cultivar, a harsh extraction, a cheap, clear bottle, the entire scientific promise just falls apart.
It really is a delicate balance.
Let's briefly recap the mechanics we've walked through today. We started by throwing out the idea that reading a basic ingredient label is enough. We shifted to viewing the certificate of analysis as a chemical blueprint, right?
Right, requiring HPLC testing to quantify those carotenoids and polyphenols while screening out heavy metals and sophisticated adulterants.
We then aligned the physical extraction methods with their intended applications. We established that non-polar supercritical CO2 pulls out the fat-soluble carotenoids with zero solvent residue.
Making it ideal for premium cosmetics and powders, exactly.
Conversely, polar ethanol extraction is required to capture water-soluble polyphenols for liquid beverages and tinctures, though it requires really strict residual solvent auditing.
Crucial point.
Then we built out the traceability demands. pushing past basic marketing claims to demand cultivar genetics, GAP harvest timing, and third-party certifications.
And finally, we looked at how light and moisture drive lipid peroxidation, turning expensive antioxidants into rancid free radicals if the packaging doesn't provide adequate functional armor.
Which is just terrifying.
It is. But this raises an important question for the future of the industry, though. We've spent this whole time detailing the logistics of supply chain standardization.
Right.
But this rigor isn't just about protecting profit margins or even consumer safety. It is the absolute prerequisite for advancing medical science.
Because of the clinical trials.
Yes. The source material points out that C. buckthorn is generating incredibly exciting preliminary data for interacting with the gut microbiome, regulating lipid metabolism, and managing systemic inflammation.
But mostly in small studies, right?
Right. Most of that data comes from preclinical models or small early-stage trials. The scientific community desperately wants to run the robust, large-scale, randomized controlled human trials needed to translate those signals into definitive clinical recommendations.
And they can't run a multi-year human trial if the botanical extract they are administering changes its chemical fingerprint from one batch to the next.
Exactly. The data would just be statistical noise. The only way we can definitively prove these profound health claims is if the botanical industry universally adopts the exact standardizations, precise extraction marker dosing, and rigorous stability practices we explored today.
Wow.
Mastering the supply chain is the only way to validate the medical science.
You can't execute the cutting-edge science until you perfect the foundational logistics. And today, we showed you exactly how to audit those logistics. Thank you all so much for joining us on this deep dive. Our goal is always to equip you with the insight to be the most well-informed person in the room. Hopefully, the next time you pick up a botanical supplement or formulate a new serum or review a supplier's documentation, you're going to look at the chemistry a little differently. Keep challenging your sources, keep demanding total transparency, and keep exploring the incredible mechanisms behind the products you use every single day. We'll catch you on the next one.